Hello, everybody. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you've got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I'll do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language, and so this is a place where you can ask all of those questions, and you don't have to worry about getting judged or ridiculed or roasted or anything of that nature. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I have been made to feel foolish in the past for not knowing things about politics that I maybe should have learned in high school. And so this is the place where you can ask those questions, and nobody's gonna make fun of you for not knowing things, or make that face like, oh, you don't know that already. Yeah, I did not care for that experience. But yeah, politics can feel like learning a new language because there's so many different three-letter agencies that people don't necessarily know what they do, and people we just refer to them by their last names, and we just throw around words like reconciliation and filibuster and continuing resolution and what's the budget bill, what's Obamacare, what's the Affordable Care Act, yeah, what's in this big beautiful bill that everybody keeps talking about, what's going on with Israel and Iran, like it's complicated. And so this is the place where you can ask all those questions, and I'll do my best to fill in whatever blanks you got. This is not one of those shows where I call people up and I yell at them for having different political beliefs than me. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you're further to the left than me or further to the right than me. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions. Eric says, can you go over some of the policies, like how to read them specifically? I normally have AI. I normally AI them. Um, you know, I find that the language of bills tends to be very legally, and I have a hard time parsing through that as well. But as far as like what that's we're really getting into the nuts and bolts there. But if you want to know like what the policies are, there are easier ways to do it than enlisting AI to like summarize things, because also AI tends to be a little inaccurate. But is that what you're asking, Eric? I'll struggle through, but it's a headache. It's important to get your news from a bunch of different sources, because a lot of times news sources will give you the relevant details to whatever bill or policy is being discussed. Or you can ask the question here as well, and I'll see if I can go through it with you. All right, this is where you can ask all your questions about politics, everybody. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to debate. I'm not here to roast. Somebody who's with a bunch of characters for their screen name says, do you support Israel? I support the citizens of Israel, and I support the citizens of Palestine, and I support the citizens of Iran. I do not support the governing body of any three of those nations. Thank you for your question, though. I don't know how you pronounce your name. If anybody's got questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I don't believe in making fun of people for trying to learn new things about politics, so this is where you can ask all of those questions. Also, I am not here to fight people or debate you. This is not one of those shows where I call up people who have different political beliefs than me and then I try to own them. That is not what I do here. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics, regardless of if you are further to the left than me or further to the right than me. I am just, if you're here in good faith, then I'm here in good faith. And maybe if you get a little spicy, I might get a little spicy back. But mostly I just try to be as sincere and open-hearted as I can in asking in answering these questions. Big Vic says, "Do you support Trump?" No, I do not. Rayon triple O seven says, "Is Trump pushing the U.S. closer to Pakistan?" I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I haven't seen any reporting on that, any moves that he has made to align us closer with Pakistan. Yeah, that's a new one for me, Rayon 0007. But foreign policy is definitely my weakest part of my political knowledge. So but yeah, first I'm hearing about that. Eric says, can you break down the due process stuff with the president and the Supreme Court? Sure. I mean, it's a moving target because there's appeals courts and Fifth Circuit courts and stuff like that, and then people are reversing all the different judgments and stuff like that. But basically, the government is responsible for, if they are going to do something to you as a citizen, they have to prove that you did some sort of crime or whatever it is that they are accusing you of. The Trump administration is trying to suspend what's called habeas corpus, which basically just means like having to prove that you did something before they deport you or throw you in jail or detain you or ship you off to El Salvador or some shit like that. And so basically, the lawyers and the courts are all arguing about the specific nuts and bolts of like who was getting due process, who wasn't getting due process. These people didn't get due process. All right, well now what do we have to do with those people? And the courts are saying you got to bring them back, and the Trump administration is like we don't want to bring them back, and so that's the the long and short of it. I think what's up, Missy? Good to see you again. But if Eric, if there are other things in there that were unclear, let me know. Big Vic says, "Why don't you support Trump?" It's a massive question, Vic. The short version, I guess, is that he is dismantling the government. He is enriching the billionaire class and making the rest of us, the 99%, hurt. He is corrupt and accepting bribes in a way that no president in history has before. He has a meme coin, which is allowing, limitless dark money contributions to him from anonymous donors, people from other countries, and I can't say enough negative things about him, Vic. But yeah, we can get into more specifics. You got a specific policy that you like or anything? Gareth Lawson says, "Why do you think politics divides so many people when our voice doesn't really make a difference?" So Gareth Lawson, our voice does make a difference. But the reason why politics is so divisive these days is because of the billionaire class. The billionaire class has been flooding the media and social media with specific narratives to try to get people to fight amongst themselves, to convince progressives that their enemy is centrists and vice versa, to convince Republican voters that their enemy is left-wing voters and vice versa, convincing Republican voters that their lives are hard because of immigrants or trans kids or brown people or poor people. That is the goal, because the billionaire class is the one who is ruining all of our lives, and they want to hide that fact from us. Edward Warren says, "Is there anything 47 is unaware of?" I think he's unaware of most things, actually. Tay Spam says, "What do you think of our participation in Iran versus Israel?" I'm concerned about it. I do not believe that that we have a functioning State Department right now. Like, our Secretary of State has like 4 jobs, and currently there is a guy, I think his name is Steve Witkoff, who I do not believe was confirmed by Congress, like basically acting as our shadow Secretary of State and bouncing all around the country. You got Trump accepting billions of dollars from foreign nations, like he doesn't have our best interests in mind. And, Netanyahu is playing him like a fucking fiddle. So, yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we are not going to handle this smartly. I am concerned that it is just going to escalate tensions. I'm concerned it's going to increase America as a target for terrorist attacks. I am concerned it's going to increase tensions in that region generally, which is just going to be unsafe for the people living in Israel and Palestine and Iran and Iraq, and just, yeah, it's a fucking quagmire, man. And I am concerned, and I do not believe that Trump is going to be able to, ease us out of that storm. All right, Dave W21 says, "How would it impact our economy if we was to have war with Iran?" I'm not 100% sure. My guess is that everything would probably go down except for military industrial complex, like Raytheon stock is going to do great. There has been, I did see some reporting that said that Iran controls a very valuable and specific trading route that they could then shut down, and would cause prices to increase and supply to go down, and it would stall the economy and create depression and stuff like that. But I've only seen one report on that, and I like to get confirmation from various sources before I go to bat for certain narratives. William Foss says, "I'm a Republican, but Trump needs to be a bit smarter." I think that's an understatement, William. But why are you a Republican? Let's see here. Charlie says, "Charlie Kirk is him." Is me? I don't think so. Charlie Kirk's a real fucking piece of shit. Daven W21 says, "All right, I did that one." Charlie Kirk. No, good to see you again. What is the best way to combat these crazy Iran-Israel conspiracy theorists? It's nonstop. No, you know what the answer is because you've been here before. You've heard me give this diatribe before. The solution is we got to talk to people in real life because most people get their news from social media, and social media is the Wild West. It is controlled, manipulated, owned, and operated by the billionaire class. So if we want people to get real information, we have to make sure that the people that we know and that love us and that care about us and trust us and who will believe us are getting the real information. Chris says, Democrat or Republican? Democrats. Martin Seeger says he's going after the states for treason. That is, I believe it. I haven't seen him say that, though. Taste Spam says, do you think there's any way to remove the Rotten Orange from the office with lawsuits? Not with lawsuits. The only way to remove a president is either elections or impeachment. Martin Seeger says he's taking control of the National Guard so that he can go into the states and clear out. Yeah, he's trying to instigate more instability and violence and chaos in blue states so that he can point to them and say, like, look how bad these Democratic-run states are. He can declare martial law. He can jail his political enemies. They've already kind of started doing that. It's straight out of the authoritarian dictator playbook. Real Money Jiggles says, like America is a country, and it worked. Not really sure what that means. Electrician Life says, put your tinfoil hat on listening to this guy. I'm just saying facts that you can easily Google. Stranger Danger says, can you speak about the Fairness Act? In my opinion, that's when news was allowed to start misinformation. Stranger Danger, did you ask me this question yesterday? Yeah, the Fairness Act, which I believe was actually the Fairness Doctrine, but again, I could be wrong about that, basically stated that you were not allowed to have a news organization with a bias. And the Reagan administration rescinded that doctrine, and then we started getting things like Fox News and right-wing talk radio and stuff like that. But yeah, I would say that that's just one piece of a large pie, as opposed to being the main domino. Gareth Lawson says, yeah, but what's the point? You think they just want us to kill each other? They want to distract us. They want to dismantle the government so that they can operate without any kind of rules or regulations. They want to be able to pollute our air and our water and our food without having to pay extra money for like safety regulations or lawsuits should they accidentally like blow up our kids or give us cancer or some shit like that. They want to be all powerful. They want to be the new kings and queens and create the 99% will be like the serf class where we're all wage slaves with zero legal recourse, and they can just like stride through and fucking prima nocta all of our wives and yeah, just fucking take what they want, do what they want, have all the money, have all the power, and zero consequences. Missy says there are no qualified people. There are qualified people. Gaelic Girl says none of our federal agencies are functional. Yeah. That's because of the Trump administration. Linda says they think immigrants are trash. They are like everyday people. Immigrants are like everyday people. That is right. Jim Kidja says, how would you address the problem? You got to tell me which specific problem you're talking about. Marie says, will we need a draft? Most likely not. Utah says, Republicans don't exist anymore. They're all MAGA. That's why I left. I'm glad that you did, Utah. Poor Farm says, do politicians lie? Some do, mostly Republicans, and Republicans tell bigger lies than Democratic politicians do. Matter Baby says, thoughts on LeBron? I don't know anything about him and politics. Let's see here. Somebody whose name I can't read says, thoughts on the Trump phones? It is just more grift for the mill. True Badra and Tanga says, is it true that Iran didn't hit the Israel hospital? I do not know about parsing every single missile strike that is happening between Iran and Israel. I would just say try to get your news from multiple sources and take everything that you're reading with a massive grain of salt, because we are getting information from Iran and Israel, and those are both bad faith actors who are trying to affect foreign policy here in America. Auto Sapien says, do you think Trump is staying in office after his second term is over? He's going to try. I don't know what method he's going to use, if he's going to try to cancel the election, or if he's going to try to petition Congress or the Supreme Court to allow him to run for a third term for X, Y, or Z reason, but he's going to try 100%. Mark Jones says, what does it take to impeach? To impeach, you just need a simple majority in the House, and that's all you need. Is to impeach, you just need the House of Representatives to vote more than 50% in favor of impeachment. When a person gets impeached, that then goes over to the Senate, and they vote on whether or not he should be removed from office. And in order to do that, you need 2/3 majority in the Senate, and that is it's a wide hurdle to clear. No president has ever cleared that hurdle, as far as I know. Maybe like earlier in American history. that's not my strong suit. But yeah, Nixon was not impeached. He resigned beforehand. Bill Clinton was impeached but not removed from office. Donald Trump was impeached twice but not removed from office. There you go. Thank you for your question, Autosapien. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. And for anybody who just got here, my name is Jarrett. I am here to answer all your questions about politics. I don't fight people. I don't roast people. I don't debate people. I don't care who you voted for. You don't have to worry about getting judged by your question. You don't have to worry about, oh, if I ask this question, you think I'm some sort of MAGA person or a libtard person. There's no judgments here. I engage with people in good faith so long as they engage with me in good faith. So if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a centrist, a progressive, whatever, I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions. All right. Moondreamer says, it seems like every time a president gets impeached, they still stay in office. How is that? Just because it's a really high bar, Moondreamer. All right. Lancey Air says, freedom of the press is one thing. The abuse of it is another. I don't know what you're referring to, Lancey Air. X Cursed Media says, how does CNN exist then? I don't know what you mean by that question. Reber Rebel says, why don't they just help people already here get legalized? So Republicans are incentivized to not actually try to solve the immigration crisis because it helps them to win elections, because they can demonize people from other countries, people that don't look like us, as being weird or other, and say that they're the ones that are doing crime and that they're dirty and they're bringing in disease and sickness and, you know, poor poverty and shit, and they're worsening our country, you know. So they're always going to be they're always going to try to stop any progress from happening on this. They also tend to be much more barbaric in the way that they try to solve this, like by just throwing people in jail or deporting them to foreign gulags or stealing children from their parents and stuff like that. And so Democrats, you know, will try to solve the issue, but it's really difficult when there are Republicans who are just acting as obstructionists in the government. But even if there weren't, it's still a hard problem, still a difficult problem to solve. All right, scrolling over to the Twitch comments. French Diamond says, "Are you pro-Trump?" No, I am not. Who's Gareth Lawson? I do not know. Now, nobody takes this statement seriously and said they're making fun of him. Yeah, Rayon, you can't really trust anything that Trump says. He's a liar. Let's see here. Where is he reading chat from? I get most of my chats from TikTok, but I go over to Twitch and YouTube every now and again. Okay, guys, says, will Trump bring peace to the Middle East? No, he will not. Rayon 007 says, Trump is on his way to destabilize his own allies in Asia. What do you think? I don't know if he has a specific motivation to destabilize other countries, but because of the way that he deals with foreign policy as like zero-sum games, there's no doing a good thing. There's only doing a thing that gets him money, and you know, it has to be transactional, fully transactional for him to do anything. And so if they make it in his better interest to do X, Y, or Z, then he will do X, Y, or Z. But it has absolutely nothing to do with stabilities or having allies or anything like that. Let's see here. All right, scrolling back into the TikTok comments all the way to the very bottom. Somebody named Jack White is spamming with just the word MAGA, so that's pretty cool. Bubba says libro talk. I mean, I am a liberal and I am a bro and I do talk, so that's accurate, I guess. Will Thrill 315 says, can Pam Bondi lose her law license? I think so. Ronnie says, thoughts on Jesus Christ? He seems like a pretty cool guy. Quim says, do you hate all Republican politicians? I don't know what the value is of saying, like, do you hate or do you not hate? Like, you know, like hate seems like you blindly dislike as opposed to having like a good reason to dislike. I don't care for Republican politicians because they lie. They are more corrupt than Democratic politicians. They have a much worse platform. They don't have any backbone. They're not standing up to Trump when they should be. They're not doing their fucking jobs. They're asleep at the wheel. So yeah, I don't think that any human being should vote for any Republican politician up and down the ballot because of a million fucking reasons. But I like to think that I don't hate anybody. You know, I like to try to have as much radical empathy for every human being that exists. Sawdog09 says, opinion on Ted Cruz Tucker Carlson interview. I love when people that I don't like get humiliated on the social media, you know, and I think it's totally cool for us to enjoy that, for us to watch that and get glee from it. I don't know how productive it's going to be. It's also infuriating to watch Tucker Carlson like be a good journalist for the first time in his fucking life. It's like, oh, you do know how to do that then. But yeah, I don't know if yeah, it's fun to watch two people that hate each other that you hate beat each other to a pulp with baseball bats. Samurai Destroyer says, "Are you pro-choice?" Yes, I am pro-choice. Good to see you again. I am pro-choice, but if you're not, if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Republicans don't actually decrease the number of abortions. They only make abortions and pregnancy more dangerous for women. If they wanted to decrease the number of abortions, they would do things like increased access to contraception, family planning, sex education, increasing the minimum wage, paid family leave, subsidized child care, stuff like that. Those are all the things that cause abortion to happen. When you just make it illegal, you just make it dangerous for women to be pregnant. Keith Higgins says Biden DNC provided permission to China to sell armaments and American tech to Iran and Russia. I don't know if that's true, Keith. It sounds like bullshit. And also, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. The Stew Crew says, would you rather fight 10? That's not a question about politics. Let's see here. Justin Harm says, should not vote for any Republican or Democrat. No, you should vote for Democrats because that's the best way of getting Republicans out of office. And also, Democrats have a way better platform than Republican politicians do. Bubba says, haha, wow, Libbro is crying. No, not. What are you talking about? That's not a question. You know who cried was last night, your mom, when I fucked her. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Mr. Bush says, how can you be pro-life and support the death penalty? Well, I don't support the death penalty, so I don't know who you're referring to. Lolly says, should Biden be prosecuted? I don't think so. I haven't seen any evidence that he's committed any crimes. American Ninja says, identity politics is not a platform. Okay. Justin Harm says, are you making me laugh? I think only you can answer that. Supert says, .com for the truth. That is not a question, so you are out of here. I don't care if you have different political beliefs than me, but just ask a question, be part of the conversation. Mr. Bush says, not you, just generalize my question. Sorry. Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. But yeah, I don't think we get any mileage out of pointing out Republican hypocrisy because then they just say that Democrats are hypocrites and then it just seems like we're, trading barbs. The Justin Harm says the answer is yes. Again, you need to answer that question for me. Dr. Deborah Harper says, so curious, where have you acquired all your extensive knowledge on politics? I just through osmosis. I read the news pretty regularly. I listen to a lot of podcasts concerning politics. I read a lot of nonfiction about current modern day politics. Yeah, I didn't take a special class or anything like that. Badger75 says, how can Democrats find a good message for the next election? So Badger75, thank you very much for this question. But you are bringing up an excellent point, which is that I don't think that any messaging strategy that the Democrats have will be effective because all of the information spheres are controlled by Republicans and the billionaire class. It is obvious. It is both obvious and insidious that Democratic messaging does not break through because there isn't the money to push it through. And so if Democrats are going to get their message across, we have to all be the messengers. That is the gospel that I am preaching, is that if we just sit around and hope and pray that Democrats come up with the most perfect messaging strategy that gets them to win the 2026 midterms and then the presidency in 2028, and we can go back to having a regular-ass country again, where we don't have to fucking be worried about this shit all the time and we can just live our fucking lives, that's not going to happen. We have to do the work, Badger75. We have to be the messengers. All right. Lolly says, who is leading in the D-Moccasin party? I think you mean Democrats. You guys kind of have to look for the leaders. I don't think that we need to sort of like appoint anybody to be the leader. It is just whoever people are listening to and following. There are a lot of great Democrats out there who are having rallies and town halls and are standing up to Donald Trump. I think it has to be one person. It can be, Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Gavin Newsom and Eric Swalwell and Chris Murphy, Gistiwala Harir says they are all corrupted. That is inaccurate, Gisty. Republicans are more corrupt. Democrats are less corrupt. You should always vote for better as opposed to worse. Just Rod 65 says you have no leaders. Newsom killed 2026. That's not a question, Just Rod. And also it is wildly inaccurate. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. All right, Samurai Destroyer says, if the abortion fails and that unborn survives from the procedure, should the government provide full protections and rights for the unborn in that case? That is I've never heard of that happening, Samurai Destroyer. But I mean, I believe that the government should support its citizens, and so regardless of if you are somebody who was born through a failed abortion or not, the government should be taking care of you. Hazefa Nawaz says, hey bro, back. All right, back into the TikTok comments. Just Rod65 says, oh, I will leave Trump. Okay. Steelers fan says, I'm going to UNC for political science major. Cool. What's something interesting that you've learned recently, Steelers fan? Keith Higgins says, do you actually think that you understand Islam? Sorry, bub, but I know. Temple Mount, for starters. Keith Higgins, you're not here in good faith, so you're out of here. Sorry, buddy. Ron Dixon says Republican Party going to split? Probably not. Not while Trump is alive. Bud Burner says only strategy Democrats have is I want your tax dollars and do what I say while I get rich. That is inaccurate. That is propaganda. That is not a question. So you are out of here. Gabrielle says, "Who is your favorite president?" I really don't. I really don't have a favorite president. I think Democrats are better than Republicans. That's the easiest. What do you call it? That is the easiest shorthand for it. Sleepless says, "What do you think of the phrase 'dying to stay in office'?" I think it's if I could be wrong about this, but I believe it refers to the fact that when people get elected, they just stay in office until they die. And I think there have been like 3 or 4 Democrats that have died in office just this year. So, yeah, I don't think that that's correct. I think that we should be advancing generational change and both nominating and electing younger, progressive politicians going forward. So, yeah, I think that's what you're talking about. Quim says, "Isn't Nancy Pelosi corrupt?" I don't know if I would call her corrupt. I definitely don't think that she's great as far as things like insider trading is concerned. You should not go to bat for insider trading just because you work for the government. That was dumb that she said that, but also every Republican does it. So, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, Marie says, "Is it time for a third party?" I don't believe that a third party is going to solve things. Right now, the 2 political parties represent a significant portion of the American population. The fact that people feel underrepresented, I think, has a lot less to do with the fact that there are just 2 parties and more to do with the fact that people are unaware of things that the parties are doing both for them and against them because our information environment has become fully corrupted by the billionaire class. If we're going to have a third party, which I'm not opposed to, I just think that the 2-party system isn't the cause of all the problems that people assume that it does. We need ranked choice voting, and Republicans are trying to make that illegal. So even if you don't like Democrats and you want a third party, you should still vote for Democrats because they're the only ones that are going to let ranked choice voting happen. And without ranked choice voting, third party candidates don't stand a chance. Plant says, "I want to only hear about Iran." Ask a question then. P1 says, "Do you believe it's time we push for term limits on Congress and senators?" Sure. Not No Taug says, Tucker and Elon going to form a third party. Probably not. Quim says, "Would you vote for Democrats if Elon ran on the ticket?" I mean, I think that the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party. The platform is better, and the politicians are generally better. If Elon ran for some position as a Democrat, I would vote against him in the primary. But if it was between him and just like a regular ass Republican, I don't know. That's a tough one because Elon is such a piece of shit. I don't trust him to enact the Democratic platform. So yeah, I might vote against him. Ill Chill McGill says, "Are we in a modern day depression era?" So I think you need 3 straight quarters of economic decline for it to be a depression. And I think so far we've only had 1 quarter, so we just kind of have to wait and see, I guess. Nana in Virginia says Elon can't run for president, but he can run for other offices. Samurai Destroyer says, "What do you think of abortion survivors?" I think good for them, man. They tried to stop you, and you fucking fought through it, man. Good job. Massapan says, "Do you believe our relationship with Iran at the moment may cause a war regardless if Trump escalates?" No. There's nothing inherent in our relationship with Iran that would cause things to escalate. It is just if we allow Israel to continue escalating tensions with Iran, and if we continue to support Israel as they are doing that. We had a groundbreaking nuclear treaty with Iran during the Obama administration that the Trump administration threw in the garbage for zero fucking reason. Trump was trying to negotiate a new one with them, and then Israel launched the attack because they were trying to blow up the negotiations with Iran. So yeah, I don't think that. I think it's very likely that we could have another treaty with Iran. You know, we could start normalizing relations with them, which would increase stabilization in that area and just generally increase global peace. Marie says, should Dems welcome Elon back? No. All right, Samurai Destroyer, you don't have to announce your questions. You can just ask them. Caleb says, is Israel manipulating our lower what? Let's see here. Josefa Nawaz says, hey back, man. Thank you for all these questions, everybody. Susie says, how can the left get our country back when the MAGA mentality is so pervasive? Excellent question, Susie. The answer is we have to do the work because the internet and the information environments is not going to help democratic messaging. It is not even going to help accurate messaging. You know, there are things that are happening right now that should be causing every American to be up in arms and flooding the phone lines and harassing their elected representatives and organizing and making sure that Democrats win every fucking seat in the government in the midterm elections. But they're not, because certain stories are being blocked and other stories are being elevated. And that is entirely the fault of the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them. So the way that we get our country back is that people like me and you do the work in real life, offline, in person, and we got to recruit other people to do that work as well. And if you want more information about what the work is, go check out my Discord. I've got a thread posted with all of what the work is. Let's see here. Caleb says, our power. Is Israel manipulating our power? Yeah, I think so. I mean, anybody who has as much money as AIPAC and Israel has the ability to manipulate our politics because of Citizens United has allowed unlimited dark money contributions. But yeah, you know, AIPAC is very powerful. Israel's very powerful. So yeah, of course they are trying to affect our powers. Jay Andrus says, I don't do politics. I stand with our Messiah. The so-called leader is supporting the enemy. I don't know what you mean by that, Jay Andres. Marie says, Democrats are not doing groundwork in community. They are, Marie. Maybe you're not seeing it, but there definitely are Democrats doing the groundwork. They just need more help. They need more people. Mia's LV Adventures says, hi back, Mia. NGN says, why do you think Trump lifted Syria's sanctions? Because they told him that he could build a Trump hotel and casino in Syria. Jay Andres says, enemies in Christ, the ones who turned away from their faith, aka Israel. Yeah, Jay Andres, you're still not making any sense. Also, ask a question or I'm going to put you out of here. Samurai Destroyer says, I do believe in climate change as a moderate conservative and support gradual transition. What do you think of nuclear energy? I think nuclear energy should be the way that we wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, but that also we need to be moving towards renewables and also nuclear fusion as opposed to nuclear fission. Flyboy says, I'm asking a question about politics. All right, I don't see it. CG Edit says, do you have any idea why Guyana is part of the travel ban? Probably because there's brown people living there, and Trump is a racist. Mia's LD Adventure says, hasn't Netanyahu been saying the nuke thing for lots of years? Yeah, he is a liar. He wants Israel to be able to take over all of the neighboring countries, and he wants to be the prime minister that did it. He is a right-wing authoritarian who is guilty of doing war crimes, and he is a liar. He's a liar. I can't say that enough times. Alrighty. Thank you for your question, Mia. Thank you. Caleb, thoughts on Tucker and Ted's interview? It was both very satisfying to watch. I like it when people humiliate Ted Cruz. That really is my kink. But yeah, it's also infuriating because I'm watching Tucker Carlson be a good journalist for the first time in his fucking life. I was like, oh, you always had the potential to do this, but you've just been carrying water for the Republican Party just because they were making you rich. Like, that seems like a pretty shitty thing to do, my man. I'm also worried that he's trying to position himself to be like the non-war presidential candidate when Trump is gone. Sleepless says, previous POTUS left plenty solid playbooks to reference. The Orange throughout all of them in first term. Yes, that is accurate, Sleepless. Samurai Destroyer says, do you think Democrat by default a pro-choice party? Yes, I do, Samurai Destroyer. Boo. Massapan says opinions on Rockland miscount votes. I think that it is the most substantive evidence that we have to date that vote totals may have been changed in the presidential election in 2024. We have to wait and see how the discovery phase works out. But right now, it is compelling, though not definitive. So yeah, I am keeping an open mind that vote totals might have been changed, but we also have to consider that it might just be an anomaly or some shit like that. Caleb says thoughts on a Cory Booker presidential campaign. I like Cory Booker. He's not my favorite, but yeah, go for it, Cory. Eric, sounds like Bush 2.0 with Trump and the Republicans Party. Not really sure what you mean by that. CG Edit says AOC is the future. I love it. I love AOC. That's cool. Let's see here. Samurai Destroyer over on Twitch. So if you think Democratic Party is a pro-choice voter, sounds weird for pro-life to vote for Democrat in that. Samurai Destroyer, did you hear that thing that I said about what actually reduces the number of abortions? Because that is the entire key as to why pro-life people should still be voting for Democrats. Eric, sounds like Bush 2.0 with Trump and the Republican Party with the war. Yeah, it is extremely regressive war hawk bullshit. New You Very says, is there a world where the president tries to accommodate both parties' major issues? I mean, is there a world where, are you talking about this president specifically or a president? Because that's what Obama tried to do. That's what Biden did, largely. It's just Republican presidents that don't. Massapan says, did you know that the anomaly was seen among multiple states only working against Kamala? Yes, I do. But again, Massapan, we have to wait for things to work itself out in the court. It does not do us any good to jump to conclusions, because otherwise we just become conspiracy theorists. But I'm with you, Massapan. I think it is sketchy as hell, and I am looking forward to what Discovery shows. All right. Birdwatcher says, check out the report on the contrast. All right, Birdwatcher. CG Edit says, what's your thoughts on ranked choice voting? Do you think Mamdani will win? I liked ranked choice voting, but it's not perfect. We had ranked choice voting in the last mayoral election, and we still got Eric Adams, and he fucking sucks. But yeah, I'm hopeful because Mamdani is great, and Lander is great, and they're not working against each other. That's what ranked choice voting does, is that you can have two progressives and two centrists on the ballot, and they don't have to pressure the other one to leave the race so that they can consolidate the votes and shit like that. But yeah, I hope Mamdani wins. I don't do predictions, but I do hope that he wins. All right. Sleepless says, I am mostly bringing up the first term. I know. So, oh yeah. That is accurate. Sleepless. Caleb says, any Republicans that you do support? It's a sliding scale. The Republican platform is just cutting taxes for the rich. That's basically all that it is. And so it's varying degrees of how much you are willing to do that, how much you are going along with Trump, that says whether or not I have any kind of respect for you at all. But because their platform is just cutting taxes for the rich, it's a bad platform. And so I'm always going to vote for a Democrat over a Republican. Professor Puffington Zaza says, how far is the host into their transition? I mean, I fully transitioned into your mom last night, sexually. Mia's LV Adventure said, didn't the European courts block Trump's tariff plan? I have not read that yet, Mia, so sorry about that. Brian Keyes says, how can I explain to someone that billionaires' 8% tax may be more in money, but our 20% tax hurts us more? I guess we just need better math skills for people, something like that. Eric says Trump can't get over 2020. He wants an open investigation. That is also accurate. All right, going over to the Twitch comments. Mr. Motorgeist says, hello back. Samurai Destroyer, I do know that I just want to hear your perspective on this because majority of pro-life are anti-abortion and even want to ban abortions. All right, yeah, I'll do that speech again. The anti-abortion movement does not actually reduce the number of abortions. All they do is make pregnancy more dangerous for women. By making abortions illegal, you are restricting certain medical procedures that some women need to protect their life and fertility. And we have already seen multiple women die here in America from right-wing abortion bans in red states. If you actually want to decrease the number of abortions, there are things that you can do. But they're all things that the Republican politicians don't want to do because they are the party of supporting the billionaire class. And the billionaire class wants a poor and desperate and struggling 99%. But the things that you could do would be like family planning, access to contraceptives, paid family leave, better access to childcare, raising the minimum wage, all things that make not getting pregnant easier, and having children more financially viable. And the Republican Party is staunchly against all of those policies. All right, let's see here. Caleb says Rand Paul thoughts. Rand Paul has exactly zero spine. He's supposed to be like this great libertarian thinker, but he's already folding on this big budget bill. Libertarianism is a astroturfed, billionaire-funded movement in an attempt to dismantle the government so that they can not have to pay any taxes and be able to poison us with the runoffs from the chemical factories and not face any legal liability for doing that. All right. CG Edit says, what's your opinion on the Second Amendment? I think it could be made better, more strict. Yeah, common sense gun control legislation. If we're not going to get rid of all the guns, let's at least have mandatory background checks, regular, and then renew those background checks to make sure that that person isn't worse, now. Gun safety classes, mandatory gun safety classes, mandatory gun license, mandatory gun insurance, Look at the way that we deal with owning a car, which is an extremely dangerous thing to own, licenses and insurance and class, and education. Seems pretty smart. Dan Blackgrad, good to see you again. Also, it should be said that adoption isn't an alternative to abortion. It's traumatic and harmful. That is accurate, says Dan. That is accurate, what Dan Blackgrad just said. CG Edit says, but I think you should still have to write so you don't deal with insurrection. I don't know. I don't know if, no matter how well-armed American citizens are, I don't think we're going to be able to take on the American military. Augustine Anthony Gahn says, aren't we all God's chosen people? Thanks. I mean, depending on what religion you are, that could be your belief. I don't really have any religious beliefs, so that's not part of my philosophy or theology, but I get your point, I guess. Everybody's cool with me. All right. Thank you for being here, everybody. We're at about 40 minutes. I usually go for about an hour. Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, just let me know in the chats. Thank you, everybody, for all of your gifts and your follows and your likes and the people that have joined my team and stuff. I'm all about all of this stuff. But yeah, hit me with your questions. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to roast. I'm not here to ridicule. I am just here to, I have a board with a nail in it. You know what, Dan? I think you could do it. I think just you with a board and a nail could take on the entire U.S. military. Donkey Punch 1975 says the Second Amendment is too off the politicians, not the military. I mean, you're talking about murder, my man. You're talking about extrajudicial murders, which I don't endorse whatsoever. Massapan says, any book recommendations? Lots of book recommendations, Massapan. If you go to my Discord, I've got threads posted. One of things that regular people like you and me can do to try to help with what's going on in the world today. It's called The Work. But I also have a thread of recommendations for both books and podcasts. But the last two books that I read on politics that I highly recommend to everybody are Dark Money by Jane Mayer and a book called The Persuaders by a man named Anand, whose last name I have a really hard time pronouncing because I'm really bad with pronouncing names. So, that's on me. I need to be better about that. But yeah, so go check those out. Dan Blackwood says, have you read Team of Rivals? I have not. I heard it's great. Sleepless says, RFK Jr. terrifies me. He terrifies me too, man. We are all in greater danger and less safe because of him. Whoops, excuse me. All right, everybody. Looks like comments are kind of slowing down, which is obviously cool. It's Friday. Ethan Walschlager says, Trump or Kamala? What a weird question to ask, Ethan, when the election is already over. Do you want to rephrase that? Are you a real person? Because you could just be somebody who forgot to unplug a bot. You know, they're still reading from the old script at the old Russian bot factory. All right, everybody. You know, put your questions in the chat. I am here to answer all of your questions. Um, you know, I was just listening to a podcast today, and Terry D. Russo says, "What do you know about Project Esther?" I don't know anything about Project Esther. Sleepless says, "Kamala or Hillary?" I think they're both fine. I guess Bond says, "Never understand how someone with a brain parasite from food safety issues now is head of U.S. Health, because Republicans are in charge and they're an extremely irresponsible party." Ethan Walschlager says, "OMB, do you think that Kamala or Trump would be better at dealing with Iran and Israel?" Kamala would be better. Trump is doing a really poor job right now. Mandy says, "Are we to be in World War III? Probably not. I believe that global tensions are going to be increasing so long as Trump is in office and we don't really have the Secretary of State doing his job. But I don't think that World War III is going to happen. That's just my prediction, though." Sleepless says, "Do you know who Andrew Wakefield and Del Bigtree are?" No, I do not. Caleb says, "I like the idea of the Republican Party more, but not the elected representatives." What do you like about the idea of the Republican Party, Caleb? Because I think that they have exactly zero good policies and have been acting like a bunch of irresponsible, unconstitutional, illegal, um, not great people. Ethan Walschlager says, "Can we have an example of how Kamala would be better?" Well, she would not have openly advocated for ethnically cleansing Palestine. She would not have given Netanyahu a blank check to continue to increase tensions with Iran. If she would not have assassinated Qasem Soleimani. There you go, my man. Let's see here. Good. Just avoid Wakefield and Bigtree. Yeah, I don't know who those people are. Yeah, Caleb, tell me what you like about the Republican Party, even if you don't like their, what do you call it? Disgruntled Diglet says Discord. Hello, Disgruntled Discord, back at ya. Taylor says he never said to ethnically cleanse Palestine. Yes, he did. He said, let's just move all those people out of there, and then we can turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East, and we'll build Trump casinos there and shit like that. Let's see here. Ethan Walschlager says, "Do you think that Israel or Iran is the bad guy?" I mean, they're technically both the bad guy. You know, like Iran is being run by religious fundamentalists who are oppressing their citizens, and Israel is being run by Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a far-right war criminal, who is doing war crimes against all of his neighboring countries because he believes that America is going to have his back when he does that, because Trump is in office, and he basically is dog walking Trump ever since he got elected. Let's see here. Sleepless says, "Or research them. Your choice. They are anti-vax and bad people." All right, yeah. When Dan Blackroyd says, "When you see the photos of Iran in the 1970s before the revolution, they were so secular and modern." That is accurate. Ethan, thank you for your questions, man. I appreciate you being here. All right, yeah, Caleb, still waiting for you to tell me what you like about the idea of the Republican Party, my guy. Or girl, I got no idea who you are. Yeah, everybody, so I'm listening to this podcast today. Not So Sunny Bono says, "Do you think Hegseth is being left out of the Iran discussion?" That is what the reporting that I saw, not Sunny Bono, and it makes sense because he is extremely unqualified, is not prepared to meet this moment whatsoever. Taylor says, "Strong closed border policy." Well, first of all, Taylor, I did not ask you, but I'm glad you're here. I'm just teasing, my man. Let's see here. Closed border policy. So there's this idea that the Democrats are for open borders, and that the Democrats have done open borders in the past, and it's untrue. It is wildly inaccurate thing to say. The difference between a Democratic policy regarding the border and the Trump policy regarding the border is that the Trump administration has been making it virtually impossible for anybody who's not rich or white to come here the right way, as they like to say in Republican circles. Cutting off asylum processes, cutting off legal immigration. When he does that, he effectively increases illegal immigration because there are people who are desperate to come here because they're worried about, violence or retribution, or their children being, kidnapped and forced to join, the cartel and shit like that. So Trump just increases illegal immigration. There's also a difference between the way that we handle people that are already here. You know, there are non-barbaric ways to handle people that need to be deported, and there are legal ways of handling people that need to be deported, giving people due process, giving them an opportunity to prove that they are here legally or have done no crimes. There are like 800 people that ICE and the Trump administration have sent to a fucking torture prison in El Salvador that have had no due process. That ICE themselves admitted that only 10% of them have been found guilty of doing any kind of serious crimes. Some of those people were legal residents. They have detained citizens, veterans, Native Americans. They have detained and arrested Democratic politicians. They are acting illegally, immorally, unethically, unconstitutionally, and the Republican Party is just fucking letting it happen. Stephen Miller, our fucking shadow president, is giving ICE orders to fucking start fights with Democratic cities, as opposed to actually doing something about where there might be issues with immigrants in this country. So yeah, I will still take Democrats over Republicans where immigration is concerned every fucking day of the week. They have proven to me time and time again that they don't actually give a shit about this issue. They just use it to win elections. They don't try to solve it. They had a bill with Democrats to try to address these issues. Then they killed it because Trump wanted to run on it for the 2024 election. So yeah, they are barbaric. They are acting illegally. They have eliminated people's right to due process. It's fucking, yeah, it's unconscionable what Republicans have been doing, what elected Republicans have been doing, and ICE and Donald Trump have been doing. And it is one of a bajillion fucking reasons why we should vote every single one of them out of power. All right, Disgruntled Diglett says, I think Trump is better for Iran and Israel because Kamala would find a way to make this seem better than it is. Trump's decision to be so blatant so people wouldn't react as aggressively right now. Majority of illegal immigrants come in on visas legally. The illegals, Democrats haven't much better for helping illegals get legal status. So I disagree with a lot of that, Disgruntled Diglett. I disagree with the idea that it's better to have Trump being blatantly warmongery in the Middle East as opposed to a Democrat who might try to hide their warmongeriness. You're making a lot of assumptions about which of those situations would be better. You're also making a lot of assumptions that Kamala Harris would be stoking tensions over there as opposed to, attempting to broker a new nuclear treaty the way that Obama did, the way that the other, Democratic president did. So yeah, as far as Democrats haven't been much better for helping illegals get legal status, yeah, because they've been stymied by the Republican Party. Any type of immigration reform that Democrats try to push that does not only exclusively have to do with border enforcement and increasing ICE's budget and shit like that gets blocked, gets filibustered by the Republican Party. So yeah, give me Democratic control of the government and don't let Republicans fucking filibuster shit, and you will see it get done. I don't make a lot of political predictions, but I'm fucking confident of that. But here's the other thing. That's the goal. That's the policy of the Democratic Party. If they're not getting it done, then primary those Democrats. Get rid of them. But don't vote for the platform that is the opposite of that. All right. All things Taylor says we did for 4 years. It was horrible. No, Taylor, you have proven to me that you are not getting your information from accurate sources. Because the Democrats in office in the last 4 years during the last term were not responsible for whatever was wrong, whatever you think was wrong with our immigration policy at the time. Repent says for 12 years Democrats had control. That is wildly inaccurate. Repent. Taylor says I lived it. It was horrible. Okay, well I don't know who you are. You could be a liar. You could be a Russian bot. What you're talking about is anecdotal evidence. I'm talking about looking at actual data, my man. All right, I need to calm things down. I'm getting a little too heated right now. All right, Carmine says Republican majority now. Republican majority now. What legislation are they passing for us? Exactly, Carmine. They're only passing their quote unquote big beautiful bill that is a massive tax giveaway to the rich, and they are shutting down government programs that help the rest of us. No, Dan Blackroyd, I'm cooler than that. Repent says open borders the past 4 years. Nothing wrong. There were no open borders the last 4 years. Repent. That is inaccurate. Please get your news from different sources. Italian Joey, good to see you again. Do you think Trump will run in 2028? I don't know if he's going to run or if he's going to try to cancel the elections, but he is going to try to stay in office until he dies. That is a prediction that I am willing to bet the fucking house on. Mandy Kidwell Parkin says, have a good day, gotta go to bed. Where do you live that you're going to bed at noon, Mandy Kidwell? All right, Zoe says, do you think Iran is a big threat to the U.S.? It is not a big threat right now, but as the longer that Trump is in office, the longer that we do not have a functioning Department of the State that is doing real diplomacy overseas, the longer that Trump continues to give Netanyahu a blank check to fucking, send rockets indiscriminately into Iran and kill a bunch of fucking civilians, the more of a danger Iran will become to America. Aaron says, I love Trump and I love blocking you. Taylor says, Russian bot, LMAO. Prove to me or not, Taylor. Susie says, when the Democrats get back in office, can we reverse Trump's executive orders? Yes, we can. Let's see. Aaron said, Republican will gain seats in Congress in 2028. Thank goodness I blocked you because you're saying bullshit. Eleb says, we'll never leave unless forced out. Not really sure what you mean. Jonathan Irwin says, oh shit thee, Jarrett Berenstein. Who are you, Jonathan Irwin? Do I know you? Sir Fissington says, comedy and politics, interesting strategy. People like host is why Trump won easily. That is a wildly weird thing to say, Sir Fishington. And if you don't ask a question, you're going to get booted. Alrighty. Let's see here. It's the Rocketeer says, have not seen any Republicans justifying repealing the ban on asbestos. That is an excellent thing to bring up. It's the Rocketeer. Yeah, the Republicans are trying to undo the asbestos ban. So you know how everybody was getting mesothelioma because they had fucking asbestos in their houses, and every time a house burns down with asbestos in it, then we all fucking get lung cancer and shit like that? Yeah, Republicans are trying to make it so that there's more asbestos out there in the world so that we can all get sick and die quicker. Isn't that great? Are we great again? Fucking make America great again, you know? Anyways, Zoe says, do you think we could impeach Trump if we get more Democrats in the House? Absolutely. Polling suggests that Democrats have a really good chance of taking back the House in 2026. But we don't have a good chance of taking back the Senate. Now, even if we did have a majority in the Senate, it still takes 2/3 majority to remove Trump from office after he's been impeached. But we could do it if we activate all of the American citizens to get people to vote for the Democrats in 2026. When pollsters say that it is extremely unlikely that Democrats will win back the Senate or even get 2/3 majority in the Senate in order to remove Trump from office, what they mean is we don't think that people would do the amount of work it would take to whip all of those votes, to talk to their neighbors and their friends and their family and their coworkers and do the work of convincing them, of recruiting them, and of actually fucking voting, But it's possible. If we do the work, it's possible. People don't think that they'll do the work, What I'm doing on here, part of my gospel is getting everybody to do the work and recruiting other people to do the work as well. So this should spread like a phone tree across America. That's how we get our country back. That's how we stop all this fucking shit from happening. Sir Fishington says Democrats are irrelevant in 2025. Fact. I made your mom irrelevant last night. Also, I'm done with you, so you're out of here. Alrighty. Marie says, I think Vance would be worse than Trump. I disagree with that, Marie. I think that Vance doesn't have the same cult of personality behind him, and I think that is the essence of Trump's power. And once we remove Trump and that cult dissipates, then we suddenly don't have nearly as many issues in this country, in my opinion. Mr. Squat says, what are some things like about the Democratic Party right now? There are a lot of things to like about the Democratic Party right now, Mr. Squat. Give me an issue and I'll tell you what. Jonathan Irwin says, do you think the insane unconstitutional actions will have an effect on either vote? Oof, excuse me. I don't. It's not going to be a salient issue, I think, because the media and the social media are not going to make it salient issues for American citizens. Because, and I've said this a million times, I'll say it a million more, social media and all of our information environments have been captured by the billionaire class. So they're going to hide the things from us that will get us to vote against Republican politicians. What are some things that you don't like about the Democratic Party right now? Very good question, Mark Harris just said at Jared Bernstein. All right, well, at Mark Harris, right back at you, buddy. I don't like the gerontocracy wing. I don't like the centrist wing. I don't like politicians dying in office. I don't like a seniority system. I much prefer a meritocracy system. I'm a progressive, and I am for generational change in government. But it should still be said that even though the party was exclusively Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's, it would still be a better platform than the Republican platform, and therefore a better party. Marie says, you don't think Vance would push the same policies? I do. But without the fervent Trump base, they don't have the strength to actually pass their agenda. That's my opinion, at least. I'm pretty confident of it, though. Russ says, why is everyone so mad about the budget cuts? There has been so much government waste in the past. The problem, Russ, is that we're not actually addressing waste with any of these cuts. It is just shutting down programs that help the 99% and help protect us from the billionaire class. So, they got rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Board. That does not save us any money. They got rid of USAID. That is not saving us any money. It's just hurting poor and working class people here and abroad. So yeah, they're not doing anything about waste, fraud, and abuse. It is literally just dismantling Medicare and Medicaid. Which is like that's what people need to fucking survive. Meals on Wheels. They're cutting Meals on Wheels. Shit like that. But thank you for your question, Russ. I appreciate you being here. Disgruntled Diglett said leftists are going to take president and Dems are going to fight it. I don't know. First of all, I don't know what you mean by leftists. Like, I don't know. I don't really truck with the difference between leftists and liberals and Democrats and progressives. But if you don't like the fact that the DNC is like you think that the DNC puts their weight behind certain candidates that you don't like, the good news is that you can do something about that. You can try to get the other candidate to win the primary. You can do the work of trying to get people to vote for the candidate that you like. And, the DNC put their weight behind Hillary. That's true. The DNC put their weight behind Biden. That is true. But also, a lot more people voted for Clinton and Biden than they did for Bernie. And I was there. I was doing the work for Bernie in both of those elections. But the American people chose the more centrist candidate. And that's not on the DNC. The DNC is not this all-powerful, Leviathan that can swing elections for their desired candidates, But I hear you, I know it's frustrating when you watch the DNC put their weight behind the candidate that you think is worse. Russian Bot says Democrats are liberals, leftists are progressives. All right, if you say so. I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but all right. Taylor's on the Moon says, how do you convince MAGA family that's brainwashed? I usually just avoid. So Taylor's on the Moon, it's hard, and it takes a lot of time and patience. So not a lot of people want to do that. Facts and data is not what does it. What does it is doing more listening than talking, meeting people where they are, finding common ground, slowly building up a foundation of factual information. If you want to know more about how to do that, you should read the book The Persuaders. I have it linked on my Discord under the recommendations thread because it is a long and hard process. Maybe you are better served talking to people who are like soft Democratic voters or soft Republican voters as opposed to turning people that are hard MAGA. But if that's important to you, if you don't want to just like write off your entire family, then it is possible. It just takes a lot of work. Dan Blackroyd spitting facts 24/7 on my live. Both Biden and Clinton are more popular with Dem voters than Sanders. That's what it boiled down to. Yep, that is 100% accurate. Augustine Anthony Gahn said, should we Dems get more or extremely aggressive against Trumpism? I guess I would wonder what you mean by extremely aggressive. I think that we should all be doing the work. I think that we should all be hounding our elected representatives, and visiting their offices and calling them and faxing them, especially if they are Republican representatives and you live like in a red district or something like that. I think that we should all be doing the work of recruiting people to be part of this fight, of convincing people that Democrats have a better policy and that we should vote for them uniformly and vote the Republican Party out of existence. Protests are really valuable, but that's just one part of the puzzle. So yeah, if that's what you mean by being extremely aggressive, then yeah. But I don't think that we need to be doing like property destruction or hurting people or anything like that. Sleepless says, did you hear about the use of glitter on masked agents? I like that. That seems pretty cool because then when we see people with glitter on them, we can potentially know that they were ICE. Russ says, all right, I already answered that one. So funny, 2025 says, did you hear about the earthquake that happened in Iran not too long ago? I did not hear about that. Jonathan Irwin says the only thing that hurt Sanders was his age, I think. I think also the fact that he described himself as a democratic socialist, and I think a lot of people are either scared of the word socialist or they're scared that other people are scared of the word socialist. And so they were worried that even though a lot of people like Bernie, that just the word socialist next to his political ideology was going to keep a lot of people from voting for him in the general election. And this is something that Democrats often do. We will often shoot ourselves in the foot trying to vote for candidates that we think will be more palatable in a general election, when what you should just do is vote for the candidate that you like the best. App 3887 says, maybe we just don't want socialists in America. I got really bad news for you, AP. We're all socialists here in America because taxes, using them to pay for things like paved roads or the military or the post office or public education, that is socialist. There already is socialism and communism here in America, and frankly, it works great. So I don't really know what you're upset about, my man. We would have been better off if we did vote for me. Well, I don't know who you are. Susie says, do you think the protests have made a difference because it seems to me that Trump is just doubling down? Yes, because that was not the point of the protest. The protests were never going to stop Trump in his tracks. The point of the protests was to organize, to communicate to each other. You are not alone. You are not crazy. To send a message to the greater general population that includes Trump and Republican senators and House members and other potential voters, other people that want to get activated and organized. It was the largest single day of protest in American history. That means something, but that does not mean the fight is over. And Trump is responding to that by doubling down, which just means that we need to double down as well. Stephanie Schufelt says we have to keep protesting. Yes, but we also have to do other things as well. Protesting is great, but it cannot be the only tool in our belt. Disgruntled Diglett said, thanks, that's my point. People fear socialism far too much. I agree, but how do we solve that, Disgruntled Diglett? People like me and you got to do the work, my man. We got to do the work. Boycotting is also very, very useful as well. Hey, Jesus, hello again to you too. Jonathan Irwin says, I grew up in it. I'm a third-generation veteran, and my boy is in the Navy. My dad is also a retired mail, I'm assuming you're saying mail delivery person or worked at the post office or some shit like that. All right, Scott the Hypnotist, congratulations. You are out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom. Alrighty. Highly curtailed candle says U.S. military is the largest socialist program in the world. Accurate. Sun Moon says we're always at war, so it doesn't matter what party is in office. Nothing really changes. That is wildly inaccurate, Sun Moon, and I hope that you will stick around and continue to ask questions and continue to engage in this live stream, because I am eager to prove to you that it does matter who is in office and that we're not just always at war, that there's more and less turmoil and war and instability depending on who is in charge and what is going on in the world. So Sun Moon, please stick around. Please ask questions. Send me a DM. My email, you can email me through my website. My DMs are open. But yeah, please don't just believe that, because it is inaccurate. Zat Kemet says, if Trump becomes a dictator, what do? We do the exact same shit. We protest, we boycott, we strike, we organize. It just becomes harder and more dangerous. But if 3.5% of any population engages in non-violent protest against an authoritarian government, every time that has happened in history, the people have won. So all we got to do is the work, guys. Doesn't matter how much power Trump is able to grab. It doesn't matter how many branches of the military he deploys to American soil. We can still take this country back. The work becomes easier or harder based on just how many people are doing it with us. Alrighty. App 3887 says, which politician would you fight in a UFC cage match? Ooh, I'll take all the Republicans at once. Thank you very much. Sun Moon says, we're always at war, either covertly or overtly. Okay, so Sun Moon, I was just engaging with you. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you out of here. Because there are certain people that come into my live streams, not because they want to engage, they just want to prove that they're right. They want to fight. They want to spread misinformation and propaganda. So prove to me that you are not that kind of person. And ask a question, be part of the conversation. Stephanie Schufelt says, we got this. Many hands make light work. I love that. The cruelty will backfire on this administration. It will, Stephanie, if we make it. Because propaganda is a fucking hell of a drug. And these guys got away with fucking murder, and they still got reelected. These guys were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, and they still got reelected. So we have to do the work. Nick87 says 50% approval rating of Trump? Absolutely not. What are you referring to, Nick? Marie says, do you agree with black people sitting out protests for now? I agree with anybody who is worried about showing up to a protest and being a target for ICE violence or deportations. There's plenty of activism to be done that does not put your life in danger if you are a vulnerable community. So yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody that what they have to do, in order to be a good progressive or Democrat or something like that. Nick 87, that is absolutely not true. He does not have a 57% approval rating. Please get your information from other sources because that is wildly inaccurate. Repent says, does it concern anyone? I don't think that is an accurate thing that you just put there, Repent. Please get your information from other sources. Let's see here. Jonathan Irwin says, something my typing is messed up. I have TBI. I don't know what TBI is. Nick, you said look it up. I have. I am well aware of what Trump's poll numbers are right now. I'm also well aware that you are not here anymore. We have always believed in serving. However, we also believe in understanding what and why we're it. Alrighty. Traumatic brain injury. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Whoever wrote that, Jonathan Irwin, so sorry to hear about that. User a whole bunch of numbers says, where does the 3.5% stat come from? So there is a professor, researcher, person whose name I do not remember, but they were recently interviewed by both Chris Hayes on his podcast and also by Pod Save America. And if you want more information on that, send me a DM, email me through my website. I can absolutely forward you that specific episode. In fact, I could probably just look it up really quickly right now. Let me see here. Okay. Where are you? Okay. Erica Chenoweth. Thank you, Dan Blackroyd. Look for the podcast episodes that feature Erica Chenoweth. She is the one who will explain to you where that 3.5% number has come from. Sleepless says, how do you feel about the morgue freezer trucks during the height of the pandemic? I mean, that's what people had to do, right? There was so much turmoil and confusion, and we didn't have the resources because Trump fucking mishandled it so badly. Vino Meta Studio says we need to strengthen the petrodollar. What a weird thing to say. I don't know if that's accurate. I have no opinions about that, Venmo, Vino. But also, don't spam the comments or I'm going to block you. Josh 2.0 says, I'm so proud my state introduced an abortion ban bill. You shouldn't. Those are really harmful for women, Josh. Are you aware that women die because of those abortion bans? And then they don't decrease the number of abortions at all, Josh? Queen of La La Land says, what do you think of recounting the election? It is most likely not going to happen. No matter how much evidence we have of election tampering, it would be an extremely expensive process that we would need unified government agreement on. Like Democrats and Republicans would have to agree to allocate resources to that, and the Republican Party is never going to do that. It's also probably impossible at this point. Like, I'm not even sure if those records are available to do the recount anymore. But yeah, I think that we have to focus on elections going forward and making sure that those elections are not tampered with. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. Sleepless, my psyche cracked a bit, and then I joined TikTok. Nate says, should we support Israel? No, I mean, we should not continue to support this government of Israel. They are far-right extremists, the Netanyahu government. Then Vino says, why would you not have any feelings about it? It's the most important thing to this country. I don't know. Doesn't really seem like a America thing. It's the first time hearing about it. I Don't Work Here says that men lost their medical privacy along with women when we lost Roe. That is also accurate. Vino says it's Vino. I didn't feel better till I joined TikTok. I mean, interesting. Demon says, is Trump starting World War III? I don't think he's going to start World War III, but he is increasing global instability, tensions, and conflicts. So yeah, you know how he said beforehand that he was going to end the war in Ukraine and end the war in Gaza? Well, instead of doing that, he has escalated both of those wars, and now also there's a war between Iran and Israel, and we're kind of in a proxy war against the Houthis. So that's pretty cool. Let's see here. Stephanie says, we tried to pass a bill to protect abortion in Arkansas. Secretary of State threw out the petition. Oh, reason 568 of 2 bajillion reasons why nobody should vote for Republicans. They ignore the will of the people. All right, Siren says, why the hell are senior citizens that require catheters allowed to declare a state of war? Because there's no rule against it, I guess. So yeah, let's vote against all the old people, my man. Alrighty. Dan Blackbird says, it's the most important thing. Rarely has to be said about the most important thing. What is that in reference to? Oh, yeah, what Venno said. I agree with that. The petrodollar nonsense. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, everybody. Final questions. Get your final questions in. Thank you for being here. If you want to engage further, my DMs are open, and also you can email me through my website. If you want to support financially, you can. You can be a subscriber. You can join my Patreon. You can buy things from my store on my website. But you don't have to. I know we are all suffering through a cost of living crisis that is only getting worse the longer that Trump remains in office. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And my schedule you can find on my website. And, that's where you can find my streaming schedule and my stand-up schedule. But, the last thing I want to say before I get out of here is I was just listening to this podcast where they were talking about how unpopular the budget bill is that the Republicans are trying to pass. And the issue is that the people that know about it are furious about it, but that not enough people know about it. And the hosts of this podcast were going, how do we get this? How do people figure out about this? What do Democrats need to do to get this message out there? And I was listening to this being like, I know exactly why this is the case. It is because all of our information spheres have been captured by the billionaire class. And so they are not going to show people things that hurt voter turnout for the Republican Party. And I was just sitting there being like, this is fucking why I do my live streams. And I'm constantly telling people that we all have to do this work in person because the machine is still out there doing what the machine does. It is still out there stopping the information that is going to help educate people about what their government is actually fucking doing. People don't know about what is bad about this big, beautiful bill. People don't know about it. They don't know what's inside it. They don't know that it's a thing that exists. And we have to be out there educating people. We have to be out there recruiting people. We have to do the work. because the things that have happened in the past, in Dark Money, that book, they're still happening right now, and they're happening worse than they were before. So we got to do it. We got to do the work, guys. Alrighty, let's see here. Eru Abraham says, "How do you feel about Cuomo painting Zoran as anti-Semitic?" Cuomo is a real piece of shit, and so he's trying to win his election as best as he can. He views this as a viable strategy because Mamdani is a brown person, and old people might be scared of him. So, yeah, he fucking sucks. I hope everybody votes against him. I hope that that him and Lander are the number two. The number one and the number two spots on the ballot. Banda Boss says, "Is the Big Beautiful Bill the actual name for it?" Yeah, it's so fucking stupid. It's called the Big Beautiful Bill Act. We're living in the dumbest timeline. Thank you, Susie. I appreciate that. I hope that I was educational. That is my whole fucking thing here. Jesus says, "Is Trump even helping the economy like Republicans said he would?" No, he is not. And economists are ringing the fucking alarm bells. Shelves are empty. I don't know if you guys have fucking noticed it, but I've noticed it, and it's really pissing me off that this is not more part of our cultural zeitgeist, that everybody's like, "Oh, it's weird that those fucking shelves are empty because this was the whole fucking thing," Alrighty, more evidence that the billionaires control our information. Okay. Is Trump delaying the Iran strike until the Big Beautiful Bill passes? I have absolutely no fucking idea what is going on in that dude's noodle. He has got the far right telling him to avoid being involved in this, but he's got the neocon war hawks and everybody on Fox News saying that he should get involved in it. The problem is his brain is like a hamster on a wheel, and it's trying to get to what will make me more money, what will enrich me and my family and give me more power. And he can't figure out what the strategy is yet. And so that's the reason why he's delaying. That's what I think. That's what I believe. Good one, Dan Blackroyd. Righty, Banda Boss, what stocks are good to invest in at this time? I have no idea. I am not, what do you call it? I am not licensed to give that kind of advice. Braylon Smith says, "Why do middle-class MAGA still support him? I can't wrap my head around him." Braylon Smith is because of propaganda and misinformation. All of our information spheres have been captured by the billionaire class who are using that and using all of their billions of dollars to push propaganda narratives. Hey, I'm Elton John. To push propaganda narratives that either get people to vote for Republicans or get people to not vote at all. And bonus points if it gets people to waste their time fighting amongst themselves and thinking that their enemy is other voters or immigrants or trans kids or brown people or poor people, when instead it is the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working in league with them. Stephanie says, "Do you ever listen to Thom Hartmann?" That name sounds really familiar, but I'm not really sure. Why that name sounds familiar to me. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Excellent live stream today. We really had some ups and downs here, man. We were coasting now at a real cool 115 on TikTok, but we were down in the 70s for a while. And I don't do this stuff for clout, but it does get me a little bit when I'm like, oh man, my numbers are down. Oh boy. So I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate all the activity and the comments and the questions and the gifts and everything like that. But yeah, the most important thing is that we do the work, guys. The most important thing, if this channel got exploded tomorrow, in the bad way, not the good way, like lots of followers. I meant if I got 0 followers tomorrow, but I just knew that millions of people were out there fucking spreading the gospel, doing the work, voting for Democrats, voting against Republicans, voting for better politicians in the primary so that people wouldn't bitch and moan about, oh, I don't like these Democrats. Well, did you vote in the primary? No, exactly. Like, that's all I want, guys. That's all I want. So yeah, do the work, guys. Have a great weekend. Do your self-care. Self-care is part of the work. And yeah, I will see you guys here on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. Goodbye.